Hello, I'm here with.
Patrick Chandler, Jack's dad.
And Patrick, where do you grow up?
Jack, I grew up in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, which is a small town just outside Madison, Wisconsin.
And football clearly seems to be a hot thing for you when you were growing up. Tell us a little bit about that and how you started playing football when you were younger.
Yeah, so you're right. I did play a lot of football when I was younger. Organized football. I am just in the backyard, but for us growing up in Wisconsin, at least where I grew up in Wisconsin, a little different than I see today, where kids are putting on pads at a very young age, and the helmet can barely be kept up by their heads. Up until the eighth grade, we actually played flag football, and in that we learned a lot about the game itself, a lot of the skills, the ability to catch and cut and throw, and also positioning. So then once we got into the eighth grade, is when I started playing tackle football, and was fortunate enough to play varsity football for 3 years.
Would you say it was better to start off playing flag football at a young age and not get those pads on, or would you say that it kind of affected you a little differently and was a disadvantage?
I think there's a lot of positives that come out of playing football that way. Again, as I said, the first thing you get is a little bit of the understanding of the game, and you get to understand the skills of the game and the positioning and routes. And especially for somebody like myself who played, running back as well as receiver on the offensive side and a defensive back, helped me with my foot positioning and footwork and stuff like that. I guess furthermore, I'm not one that is touting all the concerns about youth sports concussions in football necessarily, but I do think that there is not much of a need to be banging heads against each other in the fifth and sixth grade. While the speed is very slow, there's really just no real benefit to learning how to tackle like that at such a young age.
And earlier, when you were talking about that, you mentioned you were playing several different positions. Can you tell us those different positions?
Yeah, well, when I was on the varsity team, I was again fortunate enough to play both on offense and on defense. So I played mostly a running back on offense, although a number of the plays I would go into the slot position, either in motion or start out there and play a receiver as well. On the defensive side of the ball, I also played a corner or strong safety, or oftentimes as well a free safety. Um, so I was able to play a number of different positions on both the offense and on the defense. And then I also played on the special teams.
What was your special teams position?
On the return side, I was both a punt returner and a kick returner. And then on the punt team, I would generally go out there as one of the gunners.
So when did you start playing on the varsity team in Beaver Dam?
I was called up the first time just to join the sidelines as a freshman. I never got any playing time at that point in time. But I was, brought up to the team so I could meet some of the guys and see what it was like at that level. And then I started my sophomore year as well, playing on the varsity team. And I would say the group of guys that were on that team were great friends of mine. We had a bond together by playing together like that.
And so sophomore year, you said you started. Is that the year that you first? What position were you first playing your sophomore year?
Well,
And how do you grow into those other positions?
Yeah, just to clarify, when I started playing varsity, I didn't start that year. I started playing varsity, so I wasn't very clear with that statement. That year, I played running back. I did not play any defense that year, and I did not do any punt returns or kick returns that year. We had a very strong both punt returner and kick returner. So I started as a running back. Playing in my sophomore year, and then junior year and senior year is when I expanded into both sides of the ball. And really, at the senior year is when I played just about the entire game, quite a bit.
That's awesome. Can you tell me your most favorite, memorable moment from playing football?
There's a lot of them. A lot of memorable moments, whether or not it was a game that we played against Waupun, Wisconsin in the snow, and I think there was about 3 inches of snow or 2 to 3 inches of snow on the ground, which was always fun. Ironically, I had one of my better games that game from a total yardage gain perspective. perhaps there's other ones that were equally as memorable though. The final game of the year, the quintessential last game of my high school season, ended up being actually one of those nail biter down to the last second, and it was a very windy, cold game that we were playing, and I recall us being down by, I think it was 3 or so points, and we went down and drove the ball with about under a minute to go in the game and scored a touchdown to win it. And I kind of remember that because it was the end of what was then going to be my high school career football playing, and football for that matter altogether.
So going off that, you said how senior year, that was one of the most favorable games, memorable games. Do you ever have any aspirations to go any further in playing college D1 or D3 level, or do you kind of think that after senior year that was enough and you're just ready to hang up the cleats?
I had thought about it. I talked with my coach about it a little bit. He told me that there were some coaches that were interested in talking a little bit more about playing in college. And this goes back to the day when we talk about putting tape together. It was on a VHS recorder tape, so you had to figure out how to put it all together, and he helped me put some things together, a highlight tape that he sent out to a few coaches. The interest that came back wasn't necessarily an interest of the schools that I was looking to attend, though. So, while I thought about it and kind of hindsight, continue to think about the ability to play a college sport that I loved, it would have been great. However, the experience that I got in the college that I went to and everything that came out of going to what was Marquette University was more than I could have ever wished for from a college experience and meeting my wife. So.
And so you said you went to Marquette. Do you mind mentioning some of those other schools that had interest in you?
Yeah. So back then there was a school called Carroll College. I think it's still there, but Carroll College was one of them that I recall specifically had interest. There's a few other Wisconsin Division III schools. Off the top of my head, I don't recall them all off the top of my head. It was back in the early 90s, very early 90s, so it was quite a few years ago. Carroll College for sure, and there's another one that's in the Milwaukee area that I can't recall off the top of my head now.
Nice. So going back to that favorite moment, stuff like that. You mentioned that last game, but I kind of have a lot of interest in hearing about this parade that you were in. A lot of talk has been about it, and I'd just like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, Jack, growing up in a small town, it's interesting how the residents of town embrace the high school sports. Football being a primary one that is embraced by a lot of the people who lived in my hometown. We played on Friday nights. We played under the lights. Even if you didn't have there are people who didn't have children that went to school or played on the team would come and watch the game. Our games were covered or carried live on the radio in town, and so I had a friend of mine who had recorded all of the games from the radio announcements, and I listened to those over the years. And again, it was a big thing in my smaller town that I grew up in Wisconsin, football and high school football, but football from that matter all around. The Wisconsin Badgers was big, the Green Bay Packers obviously big. People love their football in Wisconsin, and so homecoming was always a big celebration in town. There were a number of days of barbecues and a parade that culminated in a parade before the game, pep rallies, things of that nature. And so I was part of the homecoming court team, whatever it was called. And so my date and I rode in a convertible car in the homecoming parade. Yes, we did.
Thank you, Mr. Shanewater. Hope you have a good day.
All right, thank you, Jack. It's been good talking to you.